Welcome, my friends. This is episode 17 of my series of episodes chronicling my prodigal son journey. If you still don't know what that means, prodigal son, Google prodigal son Bible, and that will better explain what it is I'm talking about. At the beginning of this one, I kind of want to give a kind of a disclaimer that this one's a little bit uglier than most, and in fact, most of them are going to be pretty ugly for the final 9 months of my Denver time. But praise God, He is a master at bringing beauty out of ugly things. So here we go. This is the morning of January 1st, 2000. It's a new year, a new century, and a new millennium. This is the first time that anyone living has ever experienced this event. We all survived the great Y2K scare, and like most, if not all, fear-mongering, self-ascribed Nostradamus's quote-unquote predictions, nothing happened. Some things never change, do they? So as the first day of the new millennium wore on, Mark began planning what we should do to celebrate this night. He was thoroughly unsatisfied with the Christmas Eve mushroom experience I told you about last time, and he was determined to do something different. I did not like where his mind was at. I escaped the harsher drugs of Christmas Eve night, but this time I was fearing I may not escape. I might not get out of this one. You see, I made a promise to myself probably about a year back when I was getting becoming more and more of a pothead, that I would never try any harder drugs, that pot was going to be where it was at. And I certainly was never jamming a needle in my arm. But Mark was determined to do something different that night. So he spent much of the day harassing me to call one of those teens at the mall where I valeted at and see what they could get. If you remember, I said that pretty much every drug, if there was a specific drug in Denver, you could buy it at this mall. There was just so much happening there. I got sick of listening to him. I finally caved and said, fine, dude, I'll call one of these teens. So I told him that, you know what, whatever this dude gets, I am not doing it with you. You're on your own. And he's like, whatever, man, your loss. So I call the kid. I tell him what's going on. He knew somebody who could score something very specific for Mark. I gave him the go-ahead. I'm like, get it, whatever, man. So I told Mark what was coming, and because Mark had never actually ever tried this specific drug, he was super excited. He couldn't wait for the night to get going. Now we're waiting, Mark and I'm getting a little nervous here because I could just see the cops coming to our apartment and arresting us. That I had just somehow foolishly invited an undercover narcotics agent over for tea. I was getting very anxious. So to help pass the time and my anxiety, I smoked a stupid amount of pot. I wanted this day to go away. I didn't want to deal with this day anymore. But I felt like that as it was taking forever, and that maybe whoever this person was that my mall friend was sending over wasn't coming. I started to feel relieved that maybe this disgusting drug that I willingly welcomed into my house wasn't coming, that maybe I could get out of this after all. But then there was a knock at the door, and my heart sunk. Time to face the music. I got off the couch, walked over to the front door, and opened it. My previously sunk heart suddenly exploded in blinding electricity. It sounds super melodramatic, but this is what happened, because standing at my door was this incredibly attractive girl. There was no way she was the one delivering this nasty drug. Because in my mind, I was expecting a stereotypical sketchy, spastic, dirtbag delivering with this disgusting drug. I was not expecting this vision of beauty standing at my door. So, staring at her for a moment, thinking maybe this is a neighbor I hadn't met yet. Just let me tell you, the whole scene, it felt otherworldly. Looking back, I can tell you right now, it was not of this world. Something very wicked arrived at my doorstep, as though sent there by somebody else, not my mall friend. This she finally speaks. Okay, sorry, I lost track of where I was going with the story. She finally speaks, and she tells me who she is, and that she's friends with my friend from the mall. I'm like, okay. So I invite her in. I'm like, over there, I'd send it over to Mark, let them do their deal, and it was his money, which, as a quick aside, Mark barely ever had money because he barely ever had a job. This dude was always either quitting a job or getting fired from one. I can tell you right now, he never at any point paid his full share of the rent. But he always had just enough money for his cheap vodka and his smokes, and now for this disgusting drug that's in my apartment. So wherever he was getting his money from, it was from a vile source. I'm certain of that. I alluded to in a different story that Mark was into some pretty dark, nasty stuff. But anyway, so back to the story. Mark and his girl, which I'm going to call April, they do their deal, and she's on her way. Probably took 5 minutes. Not long after this, my mall friend, he came over because Mark invited him to come partake with him because he didn't want to do it alone, and I was sticking to this is all you, buddy, I'm not touching this thing. This is another moment that I will never forget, okay? I'm sitting on my couch, I'm playing Crazy Taxi on my Sega Dreamcast. I'm trying valiantly to ignore the hullabaloo that was happening in the dining nook behind me. Our apartment was like, the living room, and then the front door, dining nook, and then the kitchen behind it. So this is one long line. So, behind me, they're acting crazy back there. They're having this grand old time. They're laughing, and they're goofing around. They're playing games on Mark's computer, which always sat on the kitchen table. That kitchen table pretty much served only as Mark's desk. There's never any food ate there, that's for sure. Every so often, they'd stop and snort another line of this disgusting thing, and now they're re-energized and they return to their tomfoolery. Because you see, what Beavis and Butthead are snorting is crystal meth. It was getting harder and harder for me to ignore this raw energy was happening behind me. It was so exhilarating. I've never seen anybody having so much fun and this enthusiasm and excitement for the most benign things. All I knew about meth were those two famous, anti-meth commercials from the 90s. The one where the guy's pouring Drano on his Rice Krispies instead of milk, and the other guy using a straw to drink from a car battery. Those commercials were more than enough to convince me that I wanted nothing to do with meth. But they're still having so much fun. They're having way more fun than I'm having with my pot and my Crazy Taxi. I couldn't take it anymore. I'm like, I give up. I had to go see what all this fuss was about. I figured maybe I can just do this and be done. So I go over. I'm like, can I have a little bit? Like, of course you can. Welcome to the party, pal. Take my 2 snorts. It was immediate and fantastic. Not in a good way. The explosion happening in my brain was so out of this world, I absolutely hated it. Pot mellowed my brain out. It stopped the runaway crazy train that was always chugging through my mind. Meth sped it up, made it way more boom, bing, bing, bang, boom, like just banging off the walls of my brain. It was just awful. I only did those 2 lines. I'm like, have at it, enjoy, but I'm good. I returned to the couch, just like shaky and just head to toe energy, just like this constant wave up and down, just crazy, horrifying energy in my body. I just wanted to calm down. I thought maybe I could just sleep this away, hoping that the madness will disappear quickly. I want this disgusting high to be over with. I convinced myself, nope, never again. I'm glad I tried it, but I'm sticking to my pot. Thank you very much. The other thing it did was it validated my mind that it's time to go. It's time to get out of Denver because things are getting way out of control. I cannot believe I just willingly put meth in my body. I never did sleep that night, which was super infuriating to me. I've told in another story that sleep is very important to me because it's always been my escape. But no sleep, stayed up all night. Early next morning, probably 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, somewhere around there, I got in my car and I spent the whole morning driving around. Thinking and looking back, I probably was trying to find some more pot. I'm confident I smoked every last bit of it the night before, hoping to, counteract the craziness going on. But because when I left, I was still buzzing slightly all these hours later. I'm like, how can this have lasted so long? It was awful. Because, my precious pot was trying really hard to settle my brain down. But this garbage meth was just messing with me. I couldn't take it anymore. So early in the afternoon, I don't know what time, 1 o'clock maybe, I come home. I'm starting to feel a little bit more like myself, and then maybe I can kind of sleep away the afternoon, and then come nighttime, return to my normal schedule of sleeping. But the problem is, when I got back, my friend from the mall had returned, because I think he left with me about the same time in the morning. Probably, if I remember correctly, he told his parents he was spending the night at a friend's house, so there wasn't raising any suspicions where he was. But when he came back, he also brought April with him. So I walk into my apartment, and I see her sitting on my couch. This was the last thing I expected. My friend being back was one thing, but to see her sitting on my couch playing my Dreamcast, I didn't know what to do. Something very unnatural was happening. I'm going to stop right here real quick and just tell you, it's not April. April was not the problem. She's not the one that was the evil. She was a puppet being controlled by something else, something very evil that was bent, determined to completely destroy me. Okay? This is not April. This is something else. So, all right, back to where I'm going with the story. I assumed I would never see her again, but yet here she is on my couch. I'm going to cut to the chase, okay? I'm going to tell you right now, we began dating a couple days later. She had told me that she also had felt the same crazy, out-of-control attraction for me when I first opened up that door. And she just decided that, she needed to come back and see if it was just the meth that was still in her system, because she was a total meth addict herself, or if there's something else going on here. When she got there with my friend, she was super disappointed that I was gone, because I told you I was out driving around. So she decided that she's going to stay and wait for me to come home. And it's not clear yet, okay? Here she is. It's not clear what I'm trying to explain. Something supernatural was happening. Something very crazy between April and I. There was something very evil. Because as soon as we started dating, we became inseparable. It was like we were Siamese twins and joined at the hip, and that we absolutely had to share the same organ and blood, or else we were going to die. Like, I had to be around her all the time. She was always around, always at my apartment, which also meant there was always meth in my apartment, because she was always bringing it. I'll touch on this in a different story, but at this point, when we first started dating, she was still sort of kind of dating this big-time meth dealer. Before we had met each other, she was trying really hard to get away from this guy, but because he was a legit Hell's Angel biker meth dealer, and she was also one of his drug runners, and she was having a really hard time getting out from under his thumb. But I will tell some stories about this guy later on. So now, because we're dating, and she absolutely hated pot, she just couldn't stand it, I was always doing meth constantly with this girl. I hated it. I hated meth so much, but because I was so freakishly smitten with her, I got over my hatred for meth. I got over my hatred for meth and became addicted to it pretty quickly. And unfortunately, I wasn't the only one. Mark also became a total meth head as well, because, April was always coming over. She was always bringing a new, little baggie of meth for Mark. So he quickly became addicted to it. So now he's a disgusting drunk and a meth addict. Like all pathetic drug-addicted addicts, April and I quickly ran out of money, and it was becoming scarce. But we have this huge monkey on our back. We're addicted to meth and no money to buy it. I'm going to quickly tell you how the valet business worked, at least the one that I worked for. If you were doing a nighttime gig, at a fancy restaurant or a club or whatever, you always brought the money home with you because the office was closed. The money you're bringing home was your tips, and also the money that's supposed to go to the company, their share. So what you're required to do is to bring their share, the company share, back to the office the next day, or at the very least the next day after that. But bottom line is you had to get the money to them quickly. But because I developed a good reputation with them and they totally trusted me, they weren't worried if I couldn't get it to them, 4 or 5 days, 6 days later. I had to call them and say, listen, this is what's happening. I'll get it to you by this day. And they're like, fine, whatever. So there would be times where I would have hundreds of dollars just in my room. I would have like these rubber band stacks of 1s and 5s or 10s, whatever, and just on my dresser. And April asked me about this one night. She's like, what's going on here? And I explained the whole situation to her. Well, we're both broke and desperately jonesing for a fix. So she's like, is there any way we can fudge the numbers a little bit, kind of skim some of the money off, and then, maybe go buy a little bit of meth with this money? She promised. She's like, I promise I will pay you back when I get paid, because she was a very gifted hairstylist, so she had money constantly coming in. Some nights, it wasn't every night she was making a ton of money, but sometimes she would have plenty of money and she could pay me back. And I'm like, all right, we'll do it. But I'm like, just this once? She's like, of course, just this once. Yeah, right. You all know how this story goes. At the end of this, I had stolen nearly $1,200 from the valet company, just skimming some here and there. And big shocker, the company found out and absolutely fired me. There's a positive note to how this valet story ended, but I'll tell that another time. Because for right now, my out-of-control train that I was trapped on was picking up steam, and it was heading towards that cliff. But before I would get to that cliff, one final door has to play a very key role in my deteriorating lifestyle. And I'm going to open up that door next time. I've told 2 doors up to this point. This third door, it would open up and I would walk through it. And the final 8-9 months of my time in Denver were, oh my goodness. You'll see. We'll talk about it next time. As I always do, I like to kind of wrap up these stories with positivity, with pointing those of you who are watching these things to sources of help, sources of encouragement. For those of you that are battling with mental health issues, there's links, there's places on my website you can go to. For those of you who are dealing with drug addiction, there's links for that as well. For those of you that are dealing with mental health and drug addiction, this is a problem because those 2 things are a bad mix. One and the other is bad enough. Putting them together, it's bad, okay? Oil and water, that's for sure. You eventually will catch up with you. Every drug addict says, I can quit anytime I want. It's a lie. It's a fallacy. It's really hard to quit. But there is hope, because what else is found on my website is information about who Jesus is and what Jesus expects from all of us. We all have a responsibility to make a decision with what has been revealed to us. All of us in time either had to decide, are we going to bow and going to accept what Jesus has said, who he is, or are we going to deny him and refuse? Because at some point, all of us will bow, whether we are bowing now in this life or we are bowing in the next. Please don't wait till the end. At the end, that's it. There's no more hope. All that waits for you is hell. That's harsh. I will touch on that more in a different time. I know that hell is a no-no. It's unloving. We're not supposed to talk about hell. But no, what's really unloving is not telling people that you know the cure. And that cure is found in Scripture. And in what Scripture says is the cure is Jesus Christ for the longing of our souls, for the fixing of the problem that's between the God of the universe and us. Again, I will touch on that more later. But go to my website. Don't wait till the next story when I touch on that. Go to the website and see what that says. Okay, thank you, my friends. Thank you so much. Please come back, hear what happens what's behind door number 3. Until we talk again, keep pressing on. Thanks.